1:42 in the night, Sydney Road, Melbourne. The camera catches a brief moment, just a short exchange. A woman is holding up her phone. Next to her, there's a man no one recognizes, wearing a blue hoodie. These are the last images of her alive. Just minutes earlier, she walks out of a bar and starts heading home. It's only a few minutes on foot to her apartment. Her husband is asleep, completely unaware that she's never going to make it back. At 4 in the morning, he wakes up. He steps outside, checks the places he knows she might be, calls her again and again. No answer. A few hours later, the police begin searching. Social media explodes. Thousands of people start sharing her photo. The whole city is watching, waiting for any update. Then, her bag is found, not far from home. The case is handed over to homicide. And then comes the surveillance footage. The same man in the hoodie, the same few minutes that suddenly become everything. Police start analyzing phone data. It shows that after she disappears, her phone is moving along the highway inside a car. The license plate leads them straight to someone they already know. Dangerous, previously convicted. Out on the streets. They take him into custody. During questioning, he confesses. He says it all happened in an alley not far from her home. He says it only took a matter of minutes. And what he describes next, even the most experienced officers have a hard time believing it. His confession, "They shouldn't have let me out last time." That's really what it comes down to. You know, I never actually meant to hurt her. I can't even begin to imagine what she went through, but I know exactly what it felt like for me. Alright guys, I'm going to pause for just a second. I'm really curious where you're all watching from, so drop a comment and tell me what city you're in and what time it is for you right now. Thanks for sticking with me. Go ahead and share that in the comments, and let's keep going. On October 30th, 1983, in Drogheda, Ireland, Gillian McKeon was born to George and Edith. A few years later, her parents moved with her and her brother Michael to Australia after her father got a job in Perth. There, she attended Bull Creek Primary School and later continued her education at Rossmoyne High School. A friend from her early school years remembered that Jill had a huge passion for drama and was a natural performer. She was such a vibrant young woman, incredibly smart, full of energy and strikingly beautiful. In 1996, her family returned to Ireland, where she went to grammar school and later to a community college. Her parents moved back to Perth again in 2004, but she stayed in Ireland and enrolled at University College Dublin, where she eventually earned a Bachelor of Arts degree. During her studies, she worked in student bars, and that's where she met Tom Marr, and before long, they started a relationship. Despite being quite petite, just about 5'1", her personality was larger than life. Bright and warm, she left a strong impression on everyone she met. A childhood friend once said Jill was simply an incredible person, kind to everyone, and completely genuine. She never had to pretend to be anyone else. In 2008, Jill and Tom got married, and the following year they moved to Australia. Settling in Melbourne, she began working at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, also known as ABC. Her role there involved working as a unit coordinator, and she would occasionally go on air at the radio station 774 ABC Melbourne. Her parents were once again living in Perth, and she kept in close contact with them. The bond within the family remained strong. Her brother Michael, after spending some time living in Canada, also returned to Australia. No matter where they were in the world, they always made time for each other. One evening, Jill went out with colleagues to the Brunswick Green Bar on Sydney Road. After spending some time there, they moved on to Bar Etiquette, also located on Sydney Road. As the night was coming to an end, at around 1:30 in the morning, Jill decided it was time to leave, and she walked out of the bar to head home to the apartment she shared with Tom. According to the Irish Independent, her brother tried to call her several times, but got no answer. Back at the apartment, Tom woke up and realized she still hadn't come home. So, at around 4 in the morning, he went out to look for her. He checked every place he could think of, but found no trace, and after getting no response to his calls, he contacted the police. As news of her disappearance began to spread, her colleagues at ABC took to Twitter to get the word out. On September 23rd, a Facebook page called Help Find Jill Meagher was created, and a poster campaign was launched to spread her photo as widely as possible. The scale of the search and media attention was massive. In just 5 days, the Facebook page gathered over 100,000 likes. While the search was ongoing, on September 24th, a major development was made. Jill's bag was found in an alley near Hope Street. Hope Street was not far from where she lived with her husband. After that, police made the announcement many had feared. The case was handed over to homicide. Her husband, Tom, also spoke to the media, sharing details about his wife's disappearance.
Tom, what are you going through?
Hell. It's just devastating, but yeah, just trying to push on as much as possible.
What's keeping you going?
Just hope somebody saw something, or she just walked through the door.
Do you still think that'll, could happen today?
I have to, yeah.
The next day, investigators got another breakthrough. An employee at Duchess Boutique, a bridal shop on Sydney Road where Jill had been earlier with friends, handed over surveillance footage that was later released by Victoria Police. The recording was limited, since it was captured through a window, but it clearly showed a man in a blue hoodie lingering outside the store. About 4 minutes later, at 1:42 in the morning, Jill appears in the frame. She's talking to him, holding up her phone as if she's showing him something. This was the last confirmed sighting of Jill Meagher ever recorded. After this footage was discovered, police shifted their approach, now focusing their search on the man in the hoodie.
And that CCTV footage, which we've all seen, Lisa, has led police to concentrate much greater on their suspicion that she may have been abducted.
That's right. They're particularly interested in talking to the man in a blue hoodie, jeans and sneakers who was seen doubling back across that CCTV footage. He's described as being in around his 30s, but there's quite good vision there, and police are hoping that anyone who knows him or the man himself will come forward. They say because of this CCTV footage, they're moving more and more towards the likelihood that she was abducted.
They also analysed her phone data, which showed that on the night she disappeared, the phone was moving along the highway, meaning it was inside a vehicle. After checking the license plates of cars captured on nearby cameras, police reached a chilling conclusion. Her phone was travelling at the same time as a vehicle registered to a known and dangerous sex offender.
Late today, nearly 6 days after she vanished, following a night out with friends, police arrested a man. Joining us now from outside the St Kilda Road Police Headquarters after a police briefing a few minutes ago is our reporter, Hamish Fitzsimmons. Hamish, you've just literally come from that briefing. What are police saying, or what are they able to say?
Tony, I have the worst possible news. Police say they expect to charge the man they've arrested with the rape and murder of Jill Meagher. They gave what the senior investigating officer said was an unprecedented but very off-the-record media briefing because he wanted to thank the media for its cooperation and ask for some sensitivity regarding this matter. Of course, Jill was a member of the ABC family, someone we saw around the building every day.
Hamish, it's an awful question, but it seems clear if they're going to charge him with rape and murder that is what they believe has happened.
That would appear to be the case, Tony. This was, as the police officer said, an unprecedented thing for him to do, and it was just an absolute shock. I mean, even after all this time, people, especially within the ABC, were still hopeful, and Our thoughts go to Jill's family and to her husband, Tom.
Is it clear how they got to this person that they've arrested? Did this come directly from the CCTV footage, which we've all seen, which has been so widely released? And of course, the hunt was on for someone wearing a blue hoodie.
Police have said that they got the person that they were looking for. They said the CCTV vision has played a major role in their investigation. There was talk of much more closed-circuit television footage from several shops along Sydney Road that have been collected by police in the last few days. So they're pretty sure that they've solved this case.
Adrian Ernest Bailey, 41 years old, was arrested at his home in Coburg and taken into custody. He went through hours of intense questioning before he finally confessed to everything. Officers were stunned when he admitted that he had strangled Jill with his bare hands in an alleyway not far from Hope Street. 8 hours later, at 10 o'clock in the evening on September 27th, he led officers to the place where he had left her body in a shallow grave on Black Hill Road. She had been just a few weeks away from her 30th birthday. Following his arrest, a defense attorney filed a motion to suppress any materials that could potentially harm his case, and that motion was granted. Police also came to another shocking conclusion. They discovered that Bailey had actually been on parole when he raped and murdered Jill. Back in 2002, he had been sentenced to 11 years in prison for raping 5 sex workers over the course of 6 months. He served 8 of those years and was released in 2010. His criminal history had started when he was just 18 years old, when he raped a 16-year-old girl who was a friend of his sister. Then, in August of 1990, just 1 month after turning 19, he attempted to rape a 17-year-old stranger and threatened to kill her. 4 months after that, he attempted to rape another 16-year-old girl. She had been hitchhiking, and he kidnapped her in his car, drove her to a remote location, and attacked her there. In 1991, he was sent to prison for those crimes after pleading guilty. He only served 22 months of a 5-year sentence. He would later admit that he had essentially gamed the system, faking his rehabilitation behind bars just to get out early, convincing everyone he was no longer a danger. That admission came during court proceedings related to 16 counts of rape committed between September of 2000 and March of 2001, all carried out against 5 sex workers in St Kilda. During one of those attacks, he actually apologized to his victim and then laughed in her face, told her he would do it again, and drove away. He pleaded guilty to every single count. And it was while he was out on bail for those very crimes that he killed Jill Meagher. After being released from prison in August of 2011, the then 40-year-old Bailey spotted a man eating outside a cafe at around 1:30 in the morning. He went after the 20-year-old, hurling insults at him, then punched him in the face, broke his jaw, and left him unconscious. When officers questioned him following his arrest for the rape and murder of Jill, he said, "Man, I should have been in prison, you know. They never should have let me out last time. That's really what it comes down to. And I'm saying this hoping someone hears it and never lets me out again. How many chances can one person get? You know, I never actually meant to hurt her, you get that? I want to do the right thing. I'm going away for a long time. I just hope they bring back the death penalty before I'm sentenced. I've got nothing left to live for. There are no excuses." This week must have been hell for her family, you know what I mean? I can't even imagine what she went through, but I know exactly what it felt like for me. It's horrible, man. Just horrible. And the only thing I could think was, what have I done? There's nothing else to say, man. There's just nothing left to say. At 2 in the morning on September 28th, Bailey was officially charged with the rape and murder of Jill Meagher. Just an hour later, an out-of-sessions hearing took place and lasted about 90 seconds. He was remanded in custody to await trial. The weight of what he had done seemed to catch up with him. While in custody, he attempted to take his own life. One question was on everyone's mind. Why? Why take the life of a complete stranger in such a brutal and inhuman way? Speaking to psychologist Professor James Ogloff, he said he tried to kiss her and touch her near an alley in Brunswick, close to Sydney Road. She stepped back and slapped him across the face. According to him, that reaction made him furious. He said he snapped after she rejected his advances. After the assault, she hit him with her phone and threatened to call the police. He responded by strangling her. He also said that after realizing she was no longer breathing, he sat in the alley in a panic, crying, not knowing what to do. Then he drove home, got a shovel, returned to the scene, dragged her body into his car, and drove to Gisborne South, where he dug a grave and tried to bury her. When news of what happened to Jill Meagher became public, people were shocked. Shortly after her body was found, the Australian flag above the ABC Southbank studios was lowered to half-mast as a sign of mourning. In an official statement on the ABC website, it said, "Jill was a beloved member of our local radio family. She was witty, intelligent, and a joy to be around. Her friends and colleagues at ABC will miss her deeply. Jill was an innocent victim, a young woman full of life, with everything ahead of her." Radio host John Fain also delivered an emotional tribute to her live on air.
Jill wouldn't want us triple locking the door and installing closed circuit televisions everywhere as if we live under siege, because that's not what it's about. So, this morning, we'll pay our respects to our friend, our colleague, and there's a very empty space in our office this morning.
When news of the discovery of her body spread across social media, more than 600 messages of sympathy appeared on the Help Find Jill Meagher page in just one day. That same day, around 12 million Twitter feeds mentioned her. This tragedy didn't just affect those closest to her, it reached far beyond. According to media reports, even inmates at the Melbourne Remand Centre were deeply shaken, so much so that 40 of them attended a memorial mass in the prison chapel led by Father Joe Caddy to honour Jill and pay their respects. The shock and disbelief were everywhere. Thousands of bouquets were left in her memory. Because she was Roman Catholic, many flowers were placed outside a church near where she disappeared, and a candlelight vigil was also held there. After Bailey's arrest, another issue quickly emerged. Some people began searching for him in the White Pages directory. They found a listing under the name A. Bailey, with an address and phone number, and soon that number was flooded with abusive calls. The problem was, it wasn't Adrian Bailey, it was a man named Andrew Bailey. Once the mistake became clear, the calls and harassment stopped. In her hometown of Drogheda, Ireland, on September 28th, a memorial service was held at St. Oliver's Community College, attended by thousands of people. On September 30th, just 2 days after Jill's body was found, Melbourne photographer Philip Werner organised a public march. He expected around 100 people, but the response was overwhelming. More than 30,000 walked side by side along Sydney Road in memory of Jill.
It would have been my daughters to stand up and be counted as peaceful citizens.
She should be remembered for making a difference for women all over the world.
This shouldn't be happening in a beautiful country like ours.
The issue of violence against women also became a major topic of discussion in the media.
The rally through Brunswick came as Jill's mother made her own emotional journey. 10 Sarah Arbo was there and joins us now. Sarah, you've witnessed quite a remarkable day.
I certainly have, and a very emotional one, really, from start to finish. Earlier today, we saw tens of thousands take to Sydney Road here in Brunswick in Melbourne's in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, simply to pay their respects to Jill Meagher and the life she lost. But what was perhaps more remarkable was when her mother made the journey over here, all the way from Perth with other members of her family. Now, they visited the vigil that was set up here by members of the public who don't even themselves know Jill. There are hundreds of flowers and cards.
Mrs. McKeon went through some of those cards, really taking in the words that have been left there. She was also compelled to address some of the members of the public. They wanted themselves to offer their condolences to her, and they were united in a brief hug and some soft words spoken to one another. Now, Edith McKeon herself wanted to thank not only the media, but the police, of course, for their investigation, and really just the public for their support. Here's what she had to say to 10 News earlier.
I would like to thank the huge support here in Melbourne. It's just been unbelievable. Just thank you. Simply thank you, and I hope they'll put more cameras in here, keep people safe, and just thank you, everybody for all your support. Okay.
After Bailey was charged, Facebook users began creating pages dedicated to the case, and some of them were openly hostile toward him. Victoria Police tried to have those pages taken down, but they were unsuccessful. Because of this, the Premier of Victoria suggested that changes to the law might be necessary to prevent social media content from influencing potential jurors. According to the Irish Independent, her husband Tom also supported those calls. Facebook refused to remove the content, which drew criticism from Victoria Police Commissioner Ken Lay. Speaking on Fairfax Radio, he said, "Even though social media played a big role in helping this investigation, it also created some serious challenges. We reached out to Facebook and asked them to remove a specific page, but they refused." When you look at the kind of hatred being stirred up on some of those pages, it stands in complete contrast to what we saw yesterday, when 30,000 people took to the streets, united in making our community safer and more just. The Reclaim the Night movement also organised a march on October 20th. Its goal was to give women a voice and help them feel safe walking the streets at night, while also drawing attention to the personal safety issues so many women face every day. On October 4th, a private funeral for Jill Meagher was held at Melbourne Faulkner Memorial Park. Her family once again thanked the public for their support and compassion. Among those in attendance were her colleagues from ABC and the police officers who had worked on the case. Because of the intense media attention, a designated area was set up for journalists so they could observe the ceremony, especially since Jill still had family in Ireland. The following day, an official memorial mass was held at St. Peter's Church in her hometown of Drogheda, attended by hundreds of people. The service was led by Father Oliver Devine, the same priest who had married her and Tom. The entire town seemed to stand still as people quietly walked the streets in a mourning procession. Her uncle Michael received countless condolence messages from members of the public. During a preliminary hearing in January 2013, a 2-day committal hearing was scheduled at the Melbourne Magistrates Court, set to begin on March 12, 2013. According to reports, Bailey initially planned to contest the charges, but on April 5, 2013, he pleaded guilty to the rape and murder of Jill Marr. 21 days later, he appeared in court again over several other sexual assaults in Melbourne dating back to 2000, and on those charges, he pleaded not guilty. Deputy Chief Magistrate Felicity Broughton also granted a request from the defence to extend the suppression order on publishing material that could prejudice the case or influence the court, including online content. On June 12th, Bailey appeared in court for a pre-sentencing hearing. During that session, victim impact statements were read from the Marr family and others, including Jill's manager at ABC, Catherine Hurley. The scale of devastation caused by this tragedy was immeasurable. In her statement, Catherine also shared that many of Jill's colleagues had to seek psychological support after her murder. Her husband Tom said in his statement, "What was taken from me on September 22nd, 2012 was my love, my best friend, my entire world. I think about how senseless it is, losing such a brilliant mind and a beautiful soul. Because of this crime, I've been left as only half of who I used to be." Her brother Michael said, "I feel an unbearable pain. I have to keep living a full life, but I will never forget my sister." During that same hearing, Bailey's defense lawyer, Saul Holt QC, stated that he understood he deserved a life sentence and that he was remorseful, saying, "He has genuine remorse and genuine empathy for what he has done." Part of his apology was also read out in court. "I want to apologize for my actions that night. I destroyed one precious life, and so many others along with it." Prosecutors pushed back against the claim of remorse, arguing that his attempts to cover up the crime showed a clear lack of genuine regret. During that hearing, Justice Jeffrey Nettle also lifted the suppression order, allowing the public to learn about and report on his long history of rape and violence. The courtroom was packed, with every seat filled. In the Supreme Court of Victoria, Adrian Ernest Bailey was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 35 years for the rape and murder of Jill Marr. During sentencing, Justice Nettle said that Bailey was a sexual deviant who either killed Jill because she threatened to call the police after the assault, or because the very idea of taking her life aroused him. "You were bigger and stronger than her, and you used that physical advantage to overpower her. In effect, you dragged her off the street late at night, as she was simply walking home, just steps away from where she lived." He also noted that if the defendant had not pleaded guilty, he would have received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing, Bailey kept his head down and looked up only once at the moment he heard the verdict. Outside the courthouse, her devastated father, George, addressed the media with a statement.
"Jill lived a life full of family, friends, and her beloved Tom. Jill was brutally raped and murdered, and is never coming back."
After this high-profile case, in June 2013, parole laws in Victoria underwent major changes, directly as a result of the murder of Jill Marr and other cases where women were attacked and killed by offenders who were out on parole. Nearly 3 years earlier, another Melbourne woman, Elsa Corp, had been attacked, stabbed, and strangled in a South Melbourne motel by a convicted drug dealer who, like Bailey, was also on parole at the time. Under the new laws passed by the Victorian Parliament that same week, breaching parole conditions became a separate criminal offence. This could include things like breaking curfew or violating alcohol restrictions. Police were also given the authority to respond immediately to such breaches, and any violent offenders who seriously violated their parole conditions could be sent straight back to prison. The new Premier of Victoria said in June 2013, "There's no doubt the system failed Jill Marr. Under the changes we've already put in place, this offender would have been in prison, not out on the streets. What we've done is the very least we can do to make sure something like this never happens again." And the changes didn't stop there. High Court Justice Ian Callanan carried out further reforms to the parole system, identifying 23 areas that needed improvement.
Dangerous offenders in the past have been given the benefit of the doubt that they shouldn't have been. That changes today.
One of the recommendations was to replace the paper-based parole tracking system with an electronic database. Another was to turn the part-time parole board into a fully permanent body. It was also proposed that prisoners should be required to prove they pose a low risk of reoffending before being granted parole. In September of that same year, it was revealed that Bailey had filed an appeal against his sentence through Victorian Legal Aid. The appeal argued that the minimum non-parole period was too long, and also challenged the judge's statement that he had taken a perverse satisfaction in killing Jill. In September, both the defence and the prosecution presented their arguments, and on September 26th, after less than 10 minutes of deliberation, the appeal was dismissed. In November, another controversy broke out when a senior Victoria Police sergeant, speaking at a charity event for the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia, gave a lecture about homicides and showed a crime scene photo of Jill's body. After public outrage, the detective apologised, saying the image was only shown briefly and that he had permission from Jill's family to use it. It later emerged that he had done this before as well. Police later issued an official apology, calling it an unfortunate mistake. Another controversy followed when a Catholic priest, speaking at a primary school in Melbourne, told students that if Jill had been more religious, she would have been at home in bed instead of walking the streets at night. He also incorrectly claimed she had been out at 3 in the morning. The Vicar General of the Catholic Archdiocese of Melbourne, Greg Bennett, said on 3AW radio that the church apologised for those remarks, stating, "The Archdiocese does not support comments like that. Mentioning Jill Meagher in that way was offensive and inappropriate, and people across Victoria and Ireland are mourning her tragic death." He also said he had spoken with the priest, who acknowledged the harm caused and apologised. The suppression order that had been in place during the trial also had serious consequences. Australian TV and radio host Darren Hinch was fined $100,000 for attempting to publish a detailed list of Bailey's sexual offences, which violated that order. He refused to pay the fine, and on January 17, 2014, the 69-year-old Hinch began serving a 50-day prison sentence. Nearly 2 years after he was first imprisoned for the rape and murder of Jill Meagher, Bailey was found guilty of 3 additional rapes committed before her killing. These cases were tried separately between 2014 and 2015. His victims included 2 sex workers and a tourist from the Netherlands. In the case involving the tourist, he pretended to be a Good Samaritan, telling her she was being followed by a car in the St Kilda area as she was heading home from a pub. Trusting him, she accepted a ride and got into his car. He then drove her to a secluded location, where he violently assaulted her. A warrant was issued, and she later identified him from a photo lineup. All 3 victims came forward to police following the widespread publicity after Jill's abduction and murder. By that point, he had been convicted of sexual offences against 12 different victims. Victoria police systems came under heavy criticism once again. It was revealed that Bailey's DNA had been collected back in 2001 after one of the earlier attacks, but it had not been stored in the police DNA database. In April of that year, the Victorian coroner announced that plans for a formal inquest into the circumstances of Jill's death had been cancelled. Her family welcomed the decision, saying they wanted peace and closure above all else. The non-profit organisation Legacy Australia, which supports veterans and their families, created an online condolence book. By July 2015, it had been signed by more than 3,000 people, many of whom had never known Jill personally, but felt compelled to express their sympathy. Bailey received an additional sentence of 18 years, increasing his minimum non-parole period from 35 to 43 years. The following month, on June 25th, he filed another appeal, challenging 2 of the 3 convictions as well as the extended non-parole period. In the summer of 2016, he filed yet another appeal related to one of the rape convictions, and his sentence was reduced by 3 years. During court proceedings, his lawyer stated that psychological evaluations did not find signs of psychopathy, but instead diagnosed him with borderline personality disorder. This condition was described as involving intense mood swings and poorly controlled anger. It was also stated that he had experienced sexual abuse in childhood at the hands of an older relative, as well as physical abuse from his father. Despite all his attempts to reduce his sentence, he will be in his 80s before he can even be considered for parole, and even then, the parole board would have to be convinced that he no longer poses a danger to the public. In November 2020, Bailey's mother spoke publicly for the first time in an interview about her son's case. She said that even before Jill's murder, she had tried to warn police that he was dangerous, but her warnings were ignored.
Well, you're a very powerful voice to put to it because you're coming from the other side of it. And I was about to say about your son that I thought it was important people know about his history and what he'd done, because the system failed. He shouldn't have been on the streets.
And let me tell you, Neil, I went high and I told them that I had concerns. And nobody listened to me. Nobody. His parole officer didn't listen to me. I went into the city to an office at the justice system, in the justice system. Nobody listened to me.
This is before is this before he killed Jill?
Yes, it is.
You could...
Yes, it is. Nobody listened. We need to listen to these voices. We need to listen to the victims' voices. Just because they're not with us anymore doesn't mean they're less important and their voices shouldn't be heard.
Jill's devastated husband, Tom, left Australia in August 2013 and returned to Ireland. In November of the following year, he came back to Australia to support the White Ribbon campaign, which focuses on ending violence against women. In June 2013, he gave an interview to ABC where he said he believed the justice system had failed his wife.
Do you think that the justice system failed your wife and yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it did. I think the primary role of a parole board should be to protect the innocent. Very secondary to that would be rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is still a thing we need in our justice system, of course it is, but it's not. A person like that, they have to do a risk assessment of, and the number one priority of that should be to protect the innocent, and that's what they didn't do in his case, and that's why Jill's not here.
How did you feel when you found out that he had served 2 previous prison sentences for sexual assaults, multiple sexual assaults, threats to kill, abductions, the whole thing, and for the last sentence, he served less than half of the maximum penalty for 16 counts and 5 victims?
I felt furious, and I'm still furious at it. Whenever I hear anybody say it, whenever I read it, my blood boils, because it sends a disturbing message. This man is unrepentantly evil. He's been let off too many times by our justice system, and he's just it's obviously a complete menace, and it sends out a really dangerous message to society. I think if you do this, I mean, I'm aware that his previous victims, in the previous case before Jill, were sex workers, and I'll never be convinced that that had nothing to do with the leniency of his sentence, which, as I said, sends a very disturbing message. Because if we say what it says to women is, be careful what you do, because if we don't like what you do, you won't get justice. And then what it says to people like Bailey is not don't rape, but be careful who you rape.
He also wrote an essay for the White Ribbon website titled The Danger of the Monster Myth, where he took a deep look at the common assumptions and dangerous stereotypes surrounding sexual offenders. In that piece, he tried to make the reader pause and look deeper, not just at isolated high-profile cases, but at the wider, more troubling context that often goes unnoticed. Part of his essay reads like this: "We can't look at these cases as separate, isolated incidents, because that's exactly what allows society to look away and ignore the fact that they all share the same root, violent men, and the silence of those who are not violent but choose not to step in. We will only be able to confront violence when we honestly acknowledge how it is supported and repeated over and over again. When we reduce it to the mental illness of a single individual, we're refusing to see the true scale of the problem, its deeper causes, and the need for difficult but necessary self-reflection. Real self-reflection from men takes courage, the kind that forces you to face the truth. And we will never be able to stop violence against women if, day after day, we continue to stay silent." These words don't feel like abstract thoughts. They come across as a direct message, sharp, unsettling, and painfully honest at the same time. You can feel not just analysis, but personal pain breaking through every line, leaving behind a heavy sense of unavoidable truth. And while nothing in the world can lessen the depth of that loss, or turn back time, Jill's friends and family remain quietly but firmly determined. They want to do everything they can to make sure her memory, and the impact she had on others, never fades or disappears with time. For them, it's not just about remembering, It's a way of keeping her presence alive in a world that suddenly became something completely different. Tom said that after his wife's death, he found himself in an emotional emptiness that's hard to put into words. During that time, one of the few sources of comfort he turned to was the work of Maya Angelou. Her words, shaped by deep experience and emotion, seemed to reach the parts of his soul that were still raw and open. One line, in particular, stayed with him. History, despite its unbearable pain, cannot be relived. But if we face it with courage, we won't have to live through it again.